When historians describe the fall of great civilizations, they usually focus on familiar explanations: wars, plagues, economic collapse, natural disasters. But the real story of Tartaria's destruction, the one that barely appears in historical records, the one that even today sits buried in bloodline genealogies and suppressed royal archives, began with something far more disturbing than any army or epidemic. Tartaria didn't fall to human enemies. It was infiltrated from within by beings that looked human but weren't. The greatest civilization in human history wasn't conquered by superior military force. It wasn't destroyed by disease or famine. It wasn't erased by natural catastrophe. It was dismantled systematically by shapeshifters who had spent generations breeding their way into positions of power, who wore human faces while serving inhuman agendas, who sat on Tartarian thrones while working to destroy everything Tartaria had built. The reptilian infiltration of Tartaria wasn't mythology. It wasn't superstition. It wasn't the fantasy of primitive minds. It was strategy. Patient, methodical, centuries-long strategy. And when Tartaria finally fell, when the last defenses were disabled, when the last protective technologies were sabotaged, when the mudflood buried the greatest cities humanity had ever built, the shapeshifters didn't disappear. They took over everywhere else. They established the bloodline families that still rule today. They created the systems of control that still enslave humanity. They're still in power, wearing the faces of presidents, monarchs, and billionaires, running the same agenda they ran when they destroyed Tartaria. The erasure of Tartaria from history wasn't just about hiding a civilization. It was about hiding who destroyed it and who replaced the humans who built it. The ancient texts documented them. Every civilization recorded encounters with serpent beings. The Nagas of Hindu tradition, serpent deities who could take human form. The dragons of Chinese mythology, shape-shifting rulers who founded dynasties. The serpent of Eden, taking human-like form to deceive. The Cerastes of Greek legend, serpents with horns who hunted humans. The Quetzalcoatl of Mesoamerica, the feathered serpent who ruled as a god. Every culture, every continent, every era, the same beings, the same abilities, the same agenda. These weren't independent mythologies. They were independent documentation of the same phenomenon. Shape-shifting reptilian entities interacting with human civilization. The Tartarians knew them too. And the Tartarians knew how to keep them out. Until they didn't. The Tartarian protection systems were sophisticated. Tartarian architecture wasn't just beautiful, it was defensive. The spires that topped Tartarian buildings weren't decoration. They were frequency generators, emitting vibrations that reptilian entities couldn't tolerate. The geometric patterns in Tartarian design weren't aesthetic choices. They were barriers, creating energy fields that prevented shapeshifter infiltration. The copper and crystal elements weren't just building materials. They were detection systems, resonating differently in the presence of non-human entities. The Tartarians had built their entire civilization as a fortress, against an enemy they knew existed, an enemy they had fought before, an enemy that was always looking for a way in. The infiltration began with the bloodlines. The reptilian strategy was patient, centuries patient. They couldn't breach Tartarian defenses directly, so they bred their way in, interbreeding with human populations outside Tartarian territory, creating hybrid bloodlines that appeared human, that could pass the detection systems, that could enter Tartarian cities without triggering the defenses. The hybrid bloodlines were placed strategically, in trading families who would interact with Tartarian merchants, in diplomatic families who would negotiate with Tartarian officials, in noble families who would eventually marry into Tartarian royalty. Generation after generation, the bloodlines worked their way closer, until they were inside. The royal marriages were the breach point. Tartarian royal families began marrying outside their traditional lines. The historical record shows this. New family names appearing in royal genealogies, foreign princesses marrying Tartarian princes, diplomatic marriages that strengthened alliances. Each marriage introduced hybrid genetics into Tartarian leadership. Each generation diluted the original bloodlines. Each dilution weakened the inherited resistance to reptilian influence. Within a few generations, the Tartarian royal families were compromised. They still looked Tartarian. They still spoke Tartarian. They still ruled Tartarian territories. But they carried hybrid genetics. And hybrid genetics meant hybrid loyalties. Before we go deeper into these findings, before we analyze the takeover, the destruction of Tartaria, the modern bloodline families, and the deeper questions about who really rules our world, if you're interested in these kinds of investigations, make sure you're subscribed. It helps support the research and lets me continue these long-form deep dives. Thank you. Now, as we move into the next section, we'll examine how the compromised bloodlines destroyed Tartaria from within and where those bloodlines are today. The sabotage was systematic. Once hybrid bloodlines controlled Tartarian leadership, the destruction began. First, the protective technologies were modernized. The frequency-generating spires were modified, their protective functions disabled. The geometric barriers were altered, their defensive patterns broken. The detection systems were removed, claimed to be outdated superstition. The Tartarian population didn't understand what was happening. They trusted their leaders. They didn't know their leaders had been replaced. They didn't know the modifications were deliberate sabotage. They didn't know the defenses being removed were the only things protecting them. The energy systems were shut down. Tartaria ran on free energy, the central water heaters, the atmospheric energy collectors, the frequency-based power systems. All of it threatened the reptilian agenda. Free energy meant independent populations. Independent populations couldn't be controlled, couldn't be enslaved, couldn't be farmed. The hybrid rulers began shutting down the energy systems. Maintenance, upgrades, transitions to better technology. The excuses varied. The result was the same. Tartarian populations became dependent on external energy. Energy that could be controlled. Energy that could be cut off. Energy that made enslavement possible. The knowledge was suppressed. The Tartarians had maintained knowledge of the reptilian threat. Historical records, detection methods, protection technologies. This knowledge was systematically destroyed. Libraries burned, archives sealed, teachers silenced. The hybrid rulers erased the knowledge that would expose them. They couldn't allow populations to remember that shapeshifters existed, to remember how to detect them, to remember how to protect against them. The forgetting was enforced, until the reptilian presence became mythology, until the protection became superstition, until the threat became invisible. The mudflood may have been triggered. Researchers have documented the mudflood, the catastrophic event that buried Tartarian cities. The official narrative attributes this to natural disaster, but some evidence suggests deliberate causation. Weather manipulation technology existed. Earthquake generation was possible. Flood triggering was within technological reach. The mudflood may have been the final solution. Once the defenses were down, once the energy was cut, once the knowledge was destroyed, the physical destruction completed the erasure. Tartarian populations died or scattered. Tartarian cities were buried. Tartarian civilization ended, and the shapeshifters emerged to claim the aftermath. The replacement rulers appeared immediately. After Tartaria's fall, new ruling families emerged. The Rothschilds, the Habsburgs, the Romanovs. Families that appeared from nowhere, with wealth that had no documented source, with power that had no legitimate origin. These families share characteristics: obsessive interbreeding, keeping bloodlines pure; occult interests, maintaining connection to non-human entities; long-term planning, implementing agendas across centuries; secrecy, hiding true origins and purposes; The characteristics match the hybrid bloodline profile. Families carrying reptilian genetics. Families serving reptilian agendas. Families that replace the human rulers the reptilians had destroyed. The physical tells are documented. Shapeshifters can maintain human appearance, but imperfectly. Under certain conditions, the mask slips. Stress, strong emotion, specific frequencies, camera artifacts. Researchers have documented these slips. Vertical pupil dilation in public figures, skin texture anomalies appearing momentarily, movement patterns that don't match human physiology, eye color shifts during speeches. The documentation is extensive. Video evidence from multiple sources, photographic anomalies across decades, witness testimony from close observers. The tells appear consistently, in the same families, in the same positions of power, in the same bloodlines that emerged after Tartaria's fall. The modern power structure is reptilian. Look at who rules the world today. Banking families who control money creation, royal families who maintain ceremonial power, political dynasties who pass power between generations, corporate executives who control essential resources, the same families, the same bloodlines, the same agenda, control of energy, keeping populations dependent, control of food, keeping populations unhealthy, control of information, keeping populations ignorant, control of money, keeping populations enslaved. The agenda matches what was done to Tartaria. Remove independence, remove knowledge, remove resistance. The shapeshifters aren't trying new strategies. They're repeating what worked before. The occult connections are open. The ruling bloodlines don't hide their occult interests. Bohemian Grove, elite gatherings with owl worship and ritual. Skull and bones, secret society initiation into hidden knowledge. Freemasonic temples, ritual spaces in every major city. Royal ceremonies filled with serpent and dragon symbolism. The symbolism is reptilian. Dragons on royal crests. Serpents in corporate logos. Owl imagery, representing the ability to see in darkness. The symbols aren't arbitrary. They're declarations, announcing allegiance to the reptilian hierarchy, marking territory controlled by hybrid bloodlines, signaling to those who know how to read the signs. The bloodline intermarriage continues. The ruling families still interbreed obsessively. Royal families marrying other royal families. Banking families merging with other banking families. Political dynasties connecting with corporate dynasties. The intermarriage isn't about love. It's about genetics. Maintaining the hybrid bloodlines. Preventing dilution with fully human genetics. Preserving the shape-shifting capability. Preserving the connection to the reptilian hierarchy. Preserving the ability to rule over humans. The intermarriage is strategic, just as it was when they bred their way into Tartaria, just as it will be as long as they maintain control. The feeding. Requirements are real. Reptilian entities require energy, not just physical food, emotional energy, fear, suffering, anguish, terror. This explains the persistent creation of these states. Wars that kill millions. Economic crashes that devastate populations, pandemics that spread fear globally, terrorism that maintains constant anxiety. These events aren't accidents, they're farming operations, generating the emotional energy that reptilian entities consume, feeding the beings behind the hybrid bloodlines. The suffering isn't collateral damage, it's the purpose. The reptilian hierarchy feeds on human misery. The hybrid bloodlines deliver it. The child trafficking serves the hierarchy. The persistent exposure of elite child trafficking isn't coincidence. Children produce intense emotional energy. Their suffering generates what reptilian entities need most. The trafficking networks connect to the same families, the same bloodlines, the same power structures. Exposed repeatedly, protected repeatedly. The protection reveals the priority. Systems that would normally crush such networks instead shield them. Because the networks serve those who control the systems. Because the feeding requirements override human law. Because the reptilian hierarchy demands it. The resistance exists. Not everyone in power is compromised. Human bloodlines still exist in positions of influence, fighting the reptilian agenda from within, often without fully understanding what they're fighting. The exposure of trafficking networks, human resistance. The whistleblowers who reveal truth, human resistance. The movements that challenge control, human resistance. The awakening happening globally, human resistance. The reptilians don't have complete control, they have dominant control. But resistance persists, and resistance is growing. The Tartarian knowledge is returning. The protection methods the Tartarians used can be recovered. Frequency technologies that disrupt shapeshifting. Geometric patterns that create barriers. Detection methods that reveal non-human entities. Community structures that resist infiltration. The knowledge was suppressed. But suppression isn't destruction. Fragments remain in ancient texts. Echoes remain in traditional practices. Intuitive understanding remains in human consciousness. The knowledge can be reassembled. The protection can be rebuilt. The resistance can become effective. The frequency war is real. Modern technology bathes humanity in frequencies. Cell towers, Wi-Fi, 5G, electromagnetic pollution. These frequencies aren't random, they're selected to suppress human consciousness, to prevent awakening, to maintain the veil that hides reptilian presence, to disable the natural human ability to detect non-human entities. The frequency war keeps humanity blind, unable to see what the Tartarians could see, unable to detect what the Tartarians could detect, unable to resist what the Tartarians once resisted. The technology isn't for communication, it's for control, keeping humanity in a frequency prison, while shapeshifters walk among us undetected. The awakening threatens them. Despite the suppression, humanity is awakening. More people questioning official narratives, more people researching hidden history, more people sensing that something is wrong with those in power, more people developing intuitive detection abilities. The awakening is why censorship is increasing, why control is tightening, why the agenda is accelerating. The reptilian hierarchy is afraid of humanity remembering what the Tartarians knew, remembering how to detect, remembering how to resist, remembering how to be free. The children can still see. Young children often see what adults cannot. They react strangely to certain people. They report seeing things that adults dismiss. They haven't been fully blinded by frequency suppression. They haven't been fully programmed by official reality. The children see the shapeshifters. They just don't have words for what they see. They're told they're imagining things. They're taught to ignore their perceptions. They're programmed to become as blind as their parents. But some remember. Some maintain the sight. Some grow up knowing what they saw was real. The children are the hope, if we stop blinding them. The bloodline families fear exposure. The greatest threat to reptilian control is exposure. Once humans see, they can't unsee. Once the masks slip publicly, the game changes. The families have maintained power through invisibility, through humanity not believing they exist, through the shape-shifting remaining conspiracy theory. Exposure ends this. Mass exposure changes everything, which is why they fight so hard to prevent it, why they control media so completely, why they ridicule researchers so viciously, why they label truth as insanity. The ridicule is fear, the censorship is desperation, the control is the response of beings who know they're vulnerable. The Tartarian defeat wasn't final. Tartaria fell, but humanity didn't. The reptilian victory was temporary. The control is incomplete. The resistance continues. Tartaria showed that human civilization can protect itself, can detect the infiltrators, can maintain independence, can thrive free of reptilian control. What the Tartarians built once, humans can build again. The knowledge can be recovered. The technologies can be rebuilt. the protection can be restored. The Tartarian defeat was a battle lost, not a war ended. The war continues, and humanity is beginning to fight back. This concludes the documentary, but the investigation has only just begun. Shapeshifters who infiltrated Tartaria. Hybrid bloodlines who destroyed it from within. The same bloodlines ruling today. Something out of place. Something out of time. The reptilian infiltration of Tartaria was real. The hybrid bloodlines are real. The modern control system is their creation. The feeding on human suffering continues, but the Tartarian knowledge of protection is returning. The human ability to detect is reawakening. The resistance is growing. The shapeshifters who destroyed Tartaria face something they fear. Humanity remembering. Humanity seeing. Humanity fighting back. The Tartarians knew the truth. We can know it again. The masks are slipping. The awakening is happening. And when humanity fully sees what rules over it, everything changes. The genetic markers. The hybrid bloodlines carry genetic markers. Rh-negative blood is one indicator. A blood type that defies normal evolutionary explanation. A blood type concentrated in the ruling families. A blood type that causes the body to reject normal human pregnancy. The Rh-negative factor didn't evolve naturally. It was introduced through the hybrid breeding programs, through the mixing of reptilian and human genetics. The ruling families are disproportionately Rh-negative. The royal houses of Europe, the banking dynasties, the old aristocratic lines. The correlation isn't coincidence, it's evidence of shared non-human ancestry. The ritual maintenance. Shape-shifting requires energy. Maintaining human form constantly is demanding. The hybrid bloodlines require rituals to maintain their disguise. Blood rituals documented across cultures. Sacrifice ceremonies that provide energy. Gatherings at specific times and places. The rituals aren't superstition, they're maintenance. Technical requirements for beings wearing human masks. The ritual calendar aligns with astronomical events, solstices, equinoxes, specific planetary alignments, times when the energy is optimal, times when the maintenance is most effective, times when the masks are most secure. The rituals explain the persistent reports, elite gatherings with strange ceremonies, rumors of sacrifice among the powerful, disappearances that align with ritual dates, not fantasy. Function. The territorial markers. The reptilian hierarchy marks its territory. Obelisks in major cities, ancient serpent worship symbols, dragon imagery in government buildings, serpent motifs in corporate logos. The markers are everywhere once you see them. Washington, D.C. is filled with them. The Vatican displays them openly. London's financial district features them. Every center of power is marked. The markers aren't decorative, they're declarations. This territory belongs to the hierarchy. This power structure serves the bloodlines. This institution is controlled. The humans who work in these buildings don't understand the markers. They think they're architectural choices, historical references, aesthetic decisions. But the bloodlines know, and the hierarchy knows. The territory is marked. The historical photographs. Early photography captured what later photography hid. Photographs from the mid-1800s show anomalies. Figures with unusual features, eyes that reflect differently, proportions that don't match human norms. The early photographs weren't manipulated. The technology didn't allow sophisticated editing. What the camera captured was real. As photography evolved, so did control over it. What appears in photographs became managed. Anomalies were edited out. Evidence was suppressed. The early photographic record is more honest. It shows what the bloodlines looked like before complete control, before every image could be managed, before the evidence could be hidden. The architectural evidence. Tartarian buildings included specific design elements, elements that the hybrid rulers systematically removed. The spires were truncated or demolished. The geometric patterns were altered. The crystal elements were removed. The copper was stripped and replaced. The modifications weren't random. They followed a pattern, removing exactly the elements that provided protection, removing exactly the features that prevented infiltration. The buildings that remain from Tartarian times are neutered, their protective functions disabled, their defensive capabilities removed, their beautiful shells, but the technology that made them fortresses is gone, deliberately removed by those who feared it. The underground networks. The reptilian hierarchy operates underground, literally, tunnel systems beneath major cities, deep underground military bases, cavern networks that extend for miles. The underground provides concealment, space where shapeshifting can occur without observation, areas where human form doesn't need to be maintained, connections between controlled territories. The tunnel systems are real, documented, photographed, witnessed. The official explanations don't account for their extent, don't account for their age, don't account for their connections. The underground is reptilian space, where the hierarchy operates freely, where the bloodlines retreat when needed, where the agenda is coordinated away from human eyes. The media control. The media serves the bloodlines. Every major media company traces to the same ownership, the same families, the same bloodlines, the same hierarchy. Media control serves multiple functions, hiding evidence of reptilian presence, ridiculing those who investigate, programming human consciousness, maintaining the frequency suppression. The media isn't failing to report the truth. It's succeeding at hiding it. Every editorial decision serves the agenda. Every story selected to maintain the illusion. Every fact-check designed to discredit truth. The media is the matrix, the hologram that hides what's real, the veil that keeps humanity blind, owned and operated by the hybrid bloodlines. The education programming schools program children to not see. History classes teach the approved narrative. Science classes dismiss anything outside materialism. Social pressure punishes non-conformity. The programming is comprehensive. By the time children become adults, they can't see shapeshifters. They've been trained that such things don't exist. They've been taught that their perceptions are unreliable. They've been conditioned to trust authorities over their own eyes. The education system is processing, taking humans who might detect reptilian presence, converting them into humans who cannot, taking children who see, converting them into adults who are blind. The schools don't fail to educate. They succeed at programming. The medical suppression. The medical system serves the bloodlines too. Vaccines that affect consciousness, medications that suppress perception, treatments that damage the pineal gland, fluoride that calcifies the third eye. The medical interventions aren't for health. They're for control, systematically damaging human abilities, abilities that would allow detection, abilities that would allow resistance, abilities that the Tartarians maintained. The medical system isn't healing humanity. It's disabling humanity, one treatment at a time, one generation at a time, creating populations that cannot see what rules over them. The political theatre. Politics is theatre for the bloodlines. Left versus right is staged conflict. Both sides controlled by the same families. Both sides serving the same agenda. Elections don't change control. They rotate which puppet sits in the chair. The policies that matter continue unchanged. The agenda advances regardless of who wins. The theatre distracts humanity, keeps them arguing about puppets, while ignoring the puppet masters, keeps them focused on surface politics, while missing the deeper control. The energy of political conflict feeds the hierarchy. The division generates the emotions they consume. The theatre serves multiple purposes, all of them serving the reptilian agenda. The spiritual warfare. The battle is ultimately spiritual. The reptilian hierarchy isn't just physical beings. They're connected to spiritual dimensions. to entities that exist beyond physical perception, to a hierarchy that extends beyond this realm. The spiritual dimension is where the war is won or lost. Human consciousness is the battlefield. Human awakening is the victory. Human enslavement is the defeat. The Tartarians understood this. Their protection wasn't just physical technology, it was spiritual technology. Frequency and geometry serving spiritual defense. Consciousness and intention creating barriers. Community and connection building strength. The spiritual warfare continues today, with humanity largely unaware it's happening, unaware of the stakes, unaware of their own power. The human advantage. Humans have advantages the reptilians fear. Creativity that the reptilians cannot match. Emotional depth that transcends reptilian experience. Spiritual potential that exceeds reptilian capability. Connection to source that threatens reptilian control. The suppression of humanity isn't just about control, it's about fear. Fear of what humans might become. Fear of human potential realized. Fear of awakened humanity united. The Tartarians showed what humans can achieve. Civilization that matched or exceeded reptilian capability. Technology that protected against reptilian infiltration. Society that thrived without reptilian control. Humans can do this again. The potential remains. Suppressed, but not destroyed. The critical mass. Awakening follows a pattern. Once enough humans see, all humans see. There's a threshold, a tipping point, a critical mass of awareness, after which the illusion collapses. The reptilian control depends on the illusion, depends on humanity not seeing, depends on the majority remaining blind. The awakening threatens this. Each human who sees brings the critical mass closer. Each exposure weakens the illusion. Each question begins the unraveling. The critical mass is approaching. The bloodlines know this. Their accelerating agenda is desperation. Their increasing control attempts are fear. They're racing against the awakening. And the awakening is winning. This concludes the documentary, but the investigation has only just begun. Shapeshifters who infiltrated Tartaria. Hybrid bloodlines who destroyed it from within. The same bloodlines ruling today. Something out of place. Something out of time. The reptilian infiltration of Tartaria was real. The hybrid bloodlines are real. The modern control system is their creation. The feeding on human suffering continues, but the Tartarian knowledge of protection is returning. The human ability to detect is reawakening. The resistance is growing. The shapeshifters who destroyed Tartaria face something they fear. Humanity remembering. Humanity seeing. Humanity fighting back. The Tartarians knew the truth. We can know it again. The masks are slipping. The awakening is happening. And when humanity fully sees what rules over it, everything changes. This documentary presents historical analysis and alternative interpretation for educational discussion. The claims regarding reptilian entities and hybrid bloodlines represent perspectives outside mainstream consensus. Examination of bloodline research and consciousness studies is encouraged.